Good afternoon and welcome back to the final plenary session of day one, CETA BIM Gathering. My name is Alain Hore, TU Dublin and the Construction IT Alliance. So this afternoon we're joined by three speakers: David Purdon, Technical Director of Diatech Group. We've got Casey Rutland representing Dr. Anne Kemp of the UK BIM Alliance, and also Alain Waha, Chief Technology Officer for Borough Output. You may remember that Alain spoke at a previous event we had in 2019. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations. Lots of really interesting messages today surrounding the whole cultural change needs in the sector. So David, I might ask you to start your presentation.
Thank you, Alan. Good afternoon, everyone. As Alan said, my name is David Purdon. I'm the Technical Director for Diatech Group. And the purpose of my presentation today is to talk about connected workflows, and particularly around Autodesk's new Autodesk Construction Cloud. Launched in February, the Autodesk Construction Cloud was a unified approach to managing project delivery cycles, as well as the data and the exchange of information. Now, the premise behind the Construction Cloud essentially was around the process of understanding how information is moved across from different stages. A big part of that process, however, is understanding the relative sentiment and understanding of what's going on in a global industry. So some of the sentiment that we're seeing dealing with clients in the construction and the AEC space is some of it's traditional, some of it has been leveraged against what's been happening over the last 18 months or so. You know, increased collaboration, broken processes, safety on job sites, you know, tight to low margins, avoidable rework, a real lack of predictability in how information, how projects are progressing, and really wholly around data ownership. But that's also been leveraged by the global trends, obviously massive skill shortages, the advent of COVID-19, the implementation of digital strategies across different businesses and sectors, and the whole idea around urbanization, and also the need for a massive investment in infrastructure. One of the key big areas that's growing a lot of momentum is around sustainability. And sustainability, not so much uniquely about just sustainability design, but more about sustainability business models. You know, how do we function as businesses going forward if certain situations arise that we've had to deal with over the last 18, 19 months. So construction has moved into a collaborative space, but it's still in certain ways fragmented. You know, we have teams who work in particular areas of ownership and focus, who will then, you know, through different mediums, whether it be mobile, through tablet, PCs, through web interfaces, exchange and deliver information periodically to certain stages. Now, the part of the process of collaborative working and connected workflow really leans into how do we make these teams work more as a cohesive team. So rather than being separate teams with specific purposes, it's one collective team with ownership and governance over the particular areas of focus. So what does that break down to? So on a global scale, 35% of time is wasted on non-optimal activities across projects in general. Globally, that equates to about 280 billion of rework costs, purely because of poor execution of project data structures and communication. And really 95.5% of data that's generated on a project goes unused. It serves a purpose, but that purpose does not have any follow-on value if it's not structured in a certain way to be connected and communicative in some certain way or another. So for most clients, their main point of engagement that we deal with is digitization and building a digital strategy. But the reality is that that's phase one of a multi-phase approach to changing their business model over time. The second part, which is the part that a lot of clients who are partway through or following through on our digitization practice, is we need to integrate. Something that started out as a project delivery requirement in terms of digitization is now becoming a business requirement to integrate all their systems together, to make data work for them rather than working for the data. The outcome and what we're hoping to achieve globally across all different aspects of this sector is optimization. To do more with what we have, to do it better, and to do it with more value. So Autodesk looked at us and they looked at all their tools and looked at all the ways that they worked. And in February, they launched the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So Autodesk Construction Cloud is a unified platform that takes all the different phases and aspects of project delivery and houses them in one environment. So there's no more siloed data across different platforms or different services tools. At the lower layer, there's a universal information area that hosts all the models, the drawings, issues, RFIs, costs, assets, photos, videos, so on and so forth, as well as an analytical dashboard that interrogates all this information. Above that, there are service layers, depending on the roles and personas of people, whether it be design, planning, building, or operation. But it's all housed in the one environment, this one connected cloud, as they say. So what we're trying to do with the connected cloud is take all the various teams and personas of people who are involved in a project and pull them into a more tightly cohesive unit where information exchange passes through a digital layer that sits underneath. So as drawings are progressed, as models are produced, as teams are built and evolved over time, as assets are getting built up, as costs are procuring on a project, as data models are getting built, and reporting and analytics are getting generated, that's democratized across the entire project structure, not just in pockets of responsibility or availability, but the entire team, whether it be a client, an architect, an engineer, or a construction rep on a site somewhere. So what does this really relate to? A unified data platform. So all the information that's generated on a project stays in the one place. There is no pockets off here and there, but there's a caveat to that, which I'll come back to in a minute, which enhances that even further. We're looking at the ability to share insight into the progression of a project and making that universal to all participants of a project, not just select people, and have been able to create a filter that's unique and from your perspective to view the data through the lens that you want to see. Scalability. It has to be something that 1 to 5 to 10 people can use, to 10 to 20 to 30,000 people can use. So there's a scalability to an enterprise level. And obviously simplicity. The simpler the tool, the more easier it is for users to pick up and actually handle the tool. So the tool is based around automation and making a lot of the functional requirements of, making data available to people, all done in the background. So when we look at the construction cloud, it's broken down into a couple of different areas. You've got the document management, doc control, doc conversion area, which is essentially your CDE area in many respects. On top of that, we then have personas and role capabilities for collaboration, communication, coordination for design models, which is bracketed under BIM Collaborate and BIM Collaborate Pro. And then we have the quantification tools that leverage that 2D, 3D information to start to do scope analysis and 2D, 3D takeoff. When we move into the build area, we're now starting to look at the asset information side of it, as well as the on-site activity parts. So we're looking at RFIs, submittals, quality, health and safety, information capture, tracks, checklists, punch lists, snags, so on and so forth. But when we think about how we talk to our clients, what tends to happen is, depending on who you're talking to at any given time, there's a different need. So there's a doc control centric CD where the provision requirement that the client will have will be, we need something that manages project documents. And it stays in that sphere and it stays in that zone. We may talk to a design lead and they'll say, well, we need something that allows us to collaborate with our Revit models or our Plant 3D models or Civil 3D models, or to be able to coordinate designs as they're progressing. Or we could be looking at a construction lead and they'll say, well, we need something that allows us to attack talent challenges and capture issues on site. Well, the reality is that up till now, there's been a lot of disparate technologies that sit in these spaces and they don't always communicate. With Autodesk Construction Cloud, they've essentially housed all these capabilities in the one area. So irrespective of the client I'm talking to, I can roll out a document-centric CDE, but then as design leads and construction teams come in, we can roll out the functionalities and capabilities that they require and keep the same data structure and the same format of the project controls and the project environment itself. So it's a unifying platform that we can scale up and scale down depending on the individual teams or individual person's needs. So document management, we're talking about CDE, we're talking about document version, we're talking about permission access and doc control. For collaborate, we're moving into design collaboration, the ability to communicate and coordinate information as it's progressing through a design and capture issues, capture comments, capture markups in the live environments of the models without the need to address file formats or structures. These tools tie directly into the native design files. We can then progress that into doing automated clash management and clash aggregation to a concept that we call clash avoidance. So rather than going through a formal, or in lieu, should I say, of a formal coordination meeting, designers and model managers can then automatically clash their models against each other and find issues and address them directly to the people responsibility. Pardon me. When we look at takeoff, we're really looking at the ability to start to quantify quantities of objects contained in our models and link them back to the progression of the model. So we can use it for 2D, 3D takeoff. We can do scope analysis. We can do quantification, all leveraging back to that central document management layer. So as the models are being provided, as documents are being staged, those documents can be leveraged into takeoff, and early quantification and takeoff can apply. Again, all from the same environment. And then lastly, with build, we're talking about taking all that information that's came from design right through to pre-construction and now leveraging that on the site, where we can capture issues. We can start to look at safety management. We can look at checklisting, building up asset registers, so on and so forth. But again, all housed in the one platform. Now, in recent months, Autodesk have also launched Autodesk Tandem. Now, Tandem is essentially their foray into building the digital twin. So the digital twin from Autodesk perspective and through conversations with clients can be broken into 5 different layers. There's a descriptive twin, which essentially describes the objects in question. An informative one, which has linkages and informational capture that doesn't reside directly in the model. There's a predictive digital twin, which starts to allow you to apply certain forces or certain features to it to work out what would happen in the future. Comprehensive is essentially an all-encompassing thing that captures information in real time and predicts it back into the model. And autonomous takes that comprehensive engine and applies machine learning and AI to it to do its own predictability and to look at its own functional analysis. The digital twin is the next logical step for all the information that people are generating on a digitized project. Why is it important? Well, it informs us about how a building will work or how an asset will work, whether it be vertical or linear. It allows us to put in predictability engines and start to work out what would happen if certain things arose. A valve goes down, an air handling unit fails. When we can start to simulate that to look at the what if scenarios, the more information we provide into the digital twin, the more information we can leverage back out of it is the key point to take. And if anybody hasn't looked at or is interested in digital twins, I would highly recommend looking at Autodesk Tandem. So what are the big things about this? Well, it's one of the biggest trending things in the whole AEC space, the whole aspect of a digital twin. What the digital twin really is a reflection of a business strategy, and more importantly, the digital strategy. How do they provide digital information to a client? Is it just about the delivery of a product, the delivery of an asset, or is it more about the life cycle management of a particular asset? So BIM is a key part of it. So this really leverages all the journeys and all the kind of early adopters travels to look at how BIM could be applied to an industry. This is the logical next step for it, is to leverage that information beyond the point of where the building or the piece of infrastructure has been placed on site. And it allows us to add more value to that data. So rather than being 95.5% of data being left on the side at the conclusion of a project, we're now bringing all that forward and using it to help us understand the history and the makeup and the breakup of a particular asset. And it allows you to, as a business, develop out competing and complementary services that will allow you to leverage more winning of business with your existing clients and prospective clients going forward. So for me, the key thing about the Connected Construction Cloud from Autodesk perspective is that we're trying to tie all of these teams finally into one unified team, where we each as a team member and as a team in itself have our own areas of responsibility in the project delivery cycle, but we're feeding into a wider and bigger beneficial pot. we can start to provide forward-thinking progress and forward-thinking information that's looking at towards the build and operate side at a very early stage of design. And those people responsible in operate and build side can start to leverage that early design and planning stuff at an earlier phase, because we're working in a unified platform in many respects. So what does it kind of break down to? The Construction Cloud is essentially the culmination of all the investment that Autodesk have made over the last 3 years, you know, where it be building connected, assemble, plan grid, for example, and taking the best of class and technologies that they have in those tools and bringing them into a unified platform. Now it's about integrating those tools to work more cohesively together. So rather than the traditional methodology of that your information would sit in BIM 360 docs, and then you might port it to Glue, or you might push it to Glue, and then someone might push it to another platform for field requirements, we're now pulling all these pieces of a technology together into one platform. The idea behind that is unification. And really that's the ultimate goal from a technology standpoint, is to unify our processes with our technology platforms. And that goes from having meaningful and comprehensive system and platform integrations. Now, the one kind of gap in this that is quite important is that the way that clients are now starting to look at technology and technology platforms is it's not just about project delivery cycles and project delivery methodology. It's about business-centric approaches, you know, platforms that tie into their business systems that tie into their project systems. So there's a comprehensive data exchange and a data understanding between what's happening on a project and how the impact of that happens with the business. So if projects are progressing well, we can see the direct correlation with the business side of the process. So what I kind of wanted to cover today was, for those people who aren't familiar with the Autodesk Construction Cloud, was an opportunity to kind of really break down that platform. There's things outside of the Autodesk space that can be applied, whether it be from a business standpoint, from a project standpoint, but what I think the Construction Cloud really has started to deliver on is that unified approach. We could talk about system integrations, we could talk about how you can tie different bits of technology together. What the Construction Cloud does is it kind of simplifies all that into one platform, and it democratizes the whole approach about how you share and disseminate information across your business and across your project delivery teams. So I hope everybody found that informative, and I'll hand it back to Alan. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's always great to hear from you and hear what's happening with the Autodesk suite that's available. Just one comment I wanted to make before we move on to our next speaker is just the whole issue around technology understanding. Sorry, guys. I'm going to come back to that. Actually, we're going to go to our next speaker. And Casey, good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to present for us this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Alan. Thank you very much to CETA for the invitation to speak here. I'm, of course, stepping in for Anne Kemp, who has sent through a series of slides with videos, but unfortunately there's an issue with the audio. So there is a video in the bottom right-hand corner of my slides. Try not to be distracted by them. I will be delivering Anne's slides due to the audio issue. I was already due to take over the second part of this presentation, but you can see on screen now the reason Anne is not with us today is that she's currently walking coast to coast, 190 miles across the country, as part of preparation for walking 630 miles in April and May next year. So hopefully she'll do well and she'll look for some support from you guys for next year. So I think what's the intent of today's presentation is to discuss what is commonly perceived as being the future of digital within our industry, and how that actually is often misconceived and it's actually right. So now. Our focus. So the focus is obviously to do with enabling the UK and Ireland to develop the industry to use BIM for more than just delivering documents. But first we have to clarify what we mean when we say what BIM is. And I think it's important to understand that, sorry, just skip back one slide, that at a very simplest, BIM is a process of defining, creating and delivering structured data and documents, making the right information available to the right person at the right time for the life cycle of built environment assets. It is important to understand that, and it is important to give us a bit of credit for where we've been, what we've got to with this process. The UK BIM Alliance itself is a free to join organisation. It's formed of you. Anyone can be involved. There is a small executive team, although is expanding quite rapidly due to the nature of what we are and the work we're doing. But it's made up of industry people delivering projects on a daily basis. So anyone can be part of it. We are funded by patrons and strategic partners, and we'll go through a few of those later. And it's to promote BIM as business as usual. So these slides are on autoplay. And enable the industry to connect with local resources, BIM4 groups or regional hubs or ambassadors to understand how to practically implement BIM in their organisations. In terms of the organisation of buildings, UK BIM Alliance itself, there is a small, as I said, executive team who oversee the day-to-day going on of the Alliance itself. But there's an operations team, an implementation team, which deals with the projects that we do, an engagement team who look to do the outreach work. And then part of that is Building Smart UK and Ireland, which I'll come on to later on. We also have wrapped around that is a couple of non-exec directors, an executive team, and they perform the governance role and the strategic advisory group as well that guide us in terms of our direction, our overall direction. So I did mention the patrons who very generously financially support us in terms of actual cash and time from people within their organisations. But we do have an awful lot of various different layers of patrons that help us and enable us to do the work that we do. And we are absolutely grateful to them for that. In terms of the outreach that people can connect with locally, we split it into geographical outreach in terms of the hubs and BIM regions, and then the BIM4 groups. And the BIM4 groups are domain-specific groups that are often formed without our involvement, but then we bring them into the fold as an official part of the UK BIM Alliance.
We've also got a number of different...
We've also got a number of ambassadors up and down the country who all are there to promote BIM as business as usual for organisations, no matter who they are and what they're doing. So we really do have a full group of people that are aiming to provide good quality, trusted leadership to help people in their implementation journey. We're mobilising communities, we're enabling practical implementation, and we're doing that through a common understanding with a common approach and one voice. In terms of how that manifests itself, what we've organised within the UK is the UK BIM Framework, which is a tripartite agreement between the British Standards Institution, the Centre for Digital Built Britain, and ourselves, the UK BIM Alliance. And that gives us the opportunity to be the umbrella organisation that can really push out across the built environment industry, understanding how to design, build, operate, and integrate, as we've just heard earlier on. So this is the overarching approach to implementing BIM in the UK using this management process. There's a very, very comprehensive set of guidance documents that are available on the UK BIM Framework. You can reach that by going to ukbimframework.org. We have the concepts and introduction to ISO 19650. Then we have guidance per part, so part 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we split up into guidance A to F, which are based on roles or tasks as well. There is also an interactive version of this, so you don't necessarily have to download and read the PDF. You can go through it but through role by role, search by keywords, and understand how to access and implement those things in your organisation. And what we're looking to do is to plug the gaps where industry is calling for extra information, extra guidance as to how to implement and how to take their first steps and mature their organizations in whatever it happens to be, as you can see on screen. And we'll plug a few of those gaps, hopefully, in the next session. So these are over to my slides. So having delivered that, and apologies for Anne for not being here, and also for the audio not quite working. So we're moving on to the future is now. A little bit more about me. I'm the Vice Chair of the UK BIM Alliance, helping Anne and the exec team do the great work they do. And as part of that role, it comes the role of Chair of Building Smart UK and Ireland. And again, we'll go into more detail about that. Historically, I'm an architect. I now run my own digital transformation organisation called Digital Green. I'm also part of the drafting committee for B555, which creates a lot of the documents that we all know and love, and the founder and compere of BIM Open Mic events. So keep an eye out for those when they come back. But I think it's worth taking a moment to just understand and pause for a minute and just appreciate how long we've come as an industry. We've come from mismanaged documents, missing information, a lack of access and democratizations, as we've heard earlier, of information to do with the built environment, to essentially what we have is, in the majority of instances, a well-managed, well-organized set of PDFs. And let's face it, that makes a huge, huge difference to a lot of organizations. It does mean that information is available. You can make better decisions about built environment assets, how to change them, how to operate them. But I think what we need to do is to increase our industry maturity and move from that standpoint of having a good set of data, of information, about the built environments, and move on to what BIM Level 2 was always about data, about object level data, information about objects in a structured manner. And we heard in the previous presentation that we've got lots of exciting things coming along, one of them being digital twins. But this is what really does enable us to do that. And I think, as was mentioned, BIM is a foundation to that. So better information management, however you want to call it, building information modeling, managing the information that we both ask for, deliver and use throughout the life cycle of a built asset is key to making sure digital twins can actually work. And rather than using proprietary formats, we're going to advocate using open formats, which increases the flexibility of any client's future needs within their business. We all know that irrespective of the systems that they currently use, that things will evolve and people will start to use different systems. So it's best to use open formats that can be consumed by multiple different systems. We are often asked whether the demand is there for us to create real, true data about the built environment, and the answer is honestly yes. In the UK, we have the draft Building Safety Bill that came from Grenfell to deal with fire and life safety initially, but the golden thread, as is now known, will be increasing in its usage. It's currently dealing with fire and life safety in residential buildings, but there will be lots of other life safety things and golden threads to make up a golden rope of information or a textile of information about our built environment in all sorts of different aspects. Last week, we saw the publication of the Transforming Infrastructure Performance, the roadmap to 2030, which is looking at how we can create systems and systems to better operate our infrastructure across the country. And it's not just about the physical infrastructure, it's about the social infrastructure also. Later on this year in November, we've got the COP26, where the world's United Nations come together and discuss sustainability on a world stage, on a world platform. If we're going to start dealing with sustainability, we need data to do that. It's very difficult to do that from the starting point being PDFs. If we're starting to create real data about the built assets and unbuilt assets that we have across the country, it gives us a fighting chance to understand how they're performing, how they're operating, and the differences, the changes that we can make can be. And we just heard, obviously, I don't think there'll be a presentation today or tomorrow without hearing about digital twins. And this will enable us as a platform to create and use and share the information that we have about the built environment in a much more seamless and frictionless way. So how do we go take the step from where we've currently comfortable in managing our information and documents on a common data environment to creating data a reality, and a successful one. These things have to be successful. My suggestion is that we embrace the progress that we've made so far. We continue, we keep that momentum, but the focus needs to shift from creating good quality documents named properly, but actually focus on secure interoperable data. This has always been part of what used to be called BIM Level 2, which is now called the UK BIM Framework. But it seems to have slipped by the wayside somewhat, or we're just allowing the industry to catch up with us. In order for us to do that, we need a definition to work to of interoperability. And for now, we're going with the ability of two or more systems to securely exchange information and to use that information that has been exchanged. And it's information for a defined purpose, information exchanged digitally across the contract line, and information use during the whole asset lifecycle. So these are the rules with which we're playing with. And this time, I'm going to take off my company hat and put on my Building Smart UK and Ireland hat and give a brief description about what the chapter is and how we can help the industry move on and get people to understand better how open data can help their organisation and the industry mature. In terms of an org chart, we have an exec committee, as we said, within the UK BIM Alliance. Building Smart UK and Ireland is part of one of the work streams of that, which then reaches out through the non-exec directors and governance group out into the BIM Alliance communities that I've mentioned and the BIM 4s, and ultimately into the entire built environment sector. So we have the same communication mechanism, the same governance mechanisms throughout our Building Smart UK and Ireland chapter as we do with UK BIM Alliance. There's a lot of confusion, or has been, about where Building Smart UK and Ireland sits, the work that CDBB are doing, the work the BIM Interoperability Expert Group are doing, and the Government and Industry Interoperability Group, and all the other organisations about how they connect and whether they connect. And I can honestly say they do. Obviously, you've just seen that Bazooki, Building Smart UK and Ireland, sit within the UK BIM Alliance. We work also with CDBB and the Government and Industry Interoperability Group, with the British Standards Institution, and there is an ISO convener role that Anne Kemp holds. Now, we've seen in the slides that Anne seems to be the centre of all of those things in being the connector, but we've also got those three petals in this instance that create the UK BIM framework. So they are all connected in this Venn diagram of sorts, and we do very much promote the same way, consistent way of working and support one another's initiatives. So UK BIM framework is there, as we've mentioned. In terms of our chapter, we've grown quite significantly. In 2019, Anne Kemp was the chair with David Glennon, and then Nick Nisbet was the vice chair. To today, a significant growth in terms of numbers of people that we've got engaging with the committee, that again, they keep this, the Building Smart UK and Ireland chapter ticking over, and we've got lots of exciting things coming up. So within Building Smart UK and Ireland, we have what we call the 4 Vs. We need to be vast. We need to make ourselves much more known across the UK and Ireland. We need to be vibrant in terms of being active. We need to be vital. We need to be serving our needs when it comes to open BIM on the global stage. And we need to be valuable. We need to be providing helpful, good advice to the industry on how they can work together. Now, the Building Smart International has what they call rooms. We can read those as being domains. They have an airport room, building room, construction room, infrastructure room, product room, railway room, regulatory room, and technical room. And each one of our committee members has a particular area that they are naturally inclined to look after and lead. And they reach out into the industry to gather our needs and bring them back and take them up to Building Smart International. We do currently have some gaps in terms of an airport lead and co-lead, so if anyone's interested, please do get in touch. Now, to this stage, I'd like to introduce use cases. And a lot of presentation previously mentioned different ways of using data to understand how they can do particular things with the information. But that really does rely on generating a use case and understanding and helping the customer or clients and the contractor, the contracted party, in defining the goals and the requirements and the needs of what information we're exchanging in order to undertake those particular tasks. And in a subsequent step, after the use case, the specific information exchange requirements are created. Now, it's useful to understand this because we will end up in the future, not in this session, talking about IFC and open data and how it might help. But some example use cases can include asset registry, prefabrication of pipes, concept approval, regulatory compliance, embodied carbon calculation, costing. But the use cases and the use case management tool I'll show you in 1 second is about defining exactly what information needs to be exchanged in order to undertake those tasks. Fear not though, Building Smart International has a tool for that. It's a global platform. There's a use case management service. It's in many languages, and there are samples and examples where you can go and download the information as to what level of detail is needed for a particular use case and all those things. So please, I encourage you to go and explore and have a look at those things. So in terms of the benefits for the built asset industry, we have enhanced collaboration for project delivery, better asset management, access to BIM data created for the whole life cycle of the built asset, extended breadth and depth of BIM deliverables, creating common alignment and language by adhering to international standards. And it facilitates a common data environment that provides opportunities for the users to develop new workflows and software applications and technology automation based on standard structured information. And it enables that accessible digital twin, which provides the core foundation to a long-term data strategy for built assets. Irrespective of which platform you end up using, the data will be structured in the same way. So by focusing on data, we can have a comprehensive brief. We can create task lists. We can have reminders on day-to-day just ways of working, automated checking, and most importantly, that consistency that enables us to be on our way. In terms of when people should get started, this is back to the basics of in terms of when people should get started. BIM is relevant to all sectors and everybody in our industry. There is a part to play for everyone. It's not going away. It's not a short-term thing. It's here to stay. And now really is the optimum time to ready yourselves to start to implement. There is so much good advice and good help out there. You're not going to be reinventing the wheel, or if you are, perhaps you shouldn't be. There's lots of easy ways to get onto that digital journey. There are efficiencies to be found everywhere. There is money to be saved and made, and people are doing it already. So I do encourage everyone to get started. Obviously, I'm going to promote the UK BIM framework as a set of guidance and a good, solid foundation for understanding where your particular role fits into the landscape. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get hold of me in any way you feel you'll need to.
Thanks, Casey. I think you did extremely well dealing with the video issue. So well done on that.
Alan.
It's always great to hear from the progress you're making in the UK. And indeed, if we had more time, if there was more time, we could do more together, i.e. UK BIM Alliance and the Construction IT Alliance. So we need to find that time. Sorry for the interjecting before you started. I had a clever question for David, but I'll pose that later on. So thank you, Casey, and my regards to all the team in the UK BIM Alliance. Alain, how are you? It's great to have Alain back, albeit not in person. Alain is with us virtually. Alain, you're going to be talking about. Will the metaverse culture unlock the platformization of AEC? So we're talking about an industrialized future, Alain. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I'm what stands between lunch and the audience. So I thought we should finish on a bit of fun. So let's have 20 minutes of fun and stretch ourselves in this culture stream. And I think, Alan, you gave me this brief of trying to talk about the future after the future, maybe, Casey, and what happens if we really, challenge the culture and think about radical democratization of technology. I know BIM is not a technology, but it certainly feels like it when we talk about tools. And really what we're challenging ourselves to think about is what might we redefine the way of delivering capital assets if we had that radical transformation. What might that look like? And I like the collision between the metaverse, which is something that is quite exciting, maybe a new term that will be ephemeral, and platformisation, and so that is what I made the title of the topic here, to try to challenge ourselves. Just brief introduction. Who's the animal in the room? I sit as the CTO Borough Happold. I work with Construction Innovation Hub. I work in PropTech and Contech as a VC advisory, and I'm very fortunate to meet many customers. So what I'm trying to develop here is a narrative of what I've heard and built it up to maybe bring this different cultural perspective. I think we all understand that we are on a journey with BIM. We have been on a journey with BIM. I think it's ongoing. And what I like to do for a minute is just kill that word BIM and just really think about digital. If we're in a digital medium, and I think we've been talking about rethinking the approach to data, moving from document to data-centric and information-centric. Then we also need to really think about capital delivery, how capital delivery is really structured around the technology we had, which was tablets, paper, A4s, and a human brain, and maybe put computer power to work to help with and make it work to tackle this fantastically complex problem, which is the built asset industry. And so remember, our industry is not here to pour concrete. It's trying to do that better, more effectively. We're talking about efficiencies and all that good stuff. I think we should never stop looking at building better things, not just building things better. I think that's very important. I think Casey mentioned digital twinning around, starting to understand what's actually happening in the assets we've built, rather than focusing on what's the thing we're building. And then, we know that in the end, this is fundamental to who we are. And culture is central. Culture is central to what we are trying to do. We know 2015, for example, we have that resistance to cultural change is one of the real barriers to what we're trying to do. But I think it's also an opportunity, because culture is central to successful companies. Companies that persist are those that have a real strong purpose and a strong culture to deliver it. And so let's just, we live in this digital world. We live in a moment of renaissance. Sylvia Serres talks about 12 Gutenberg moments happening all at once. If I count on those that she enumerates, I think the majority of them should be creating a renaissance for our industry. And I'm not sure we're there yet. I think we're just maybe not as ambitious as we could be. And
no matter how large, no matter how small, we'll be on the internet in the year 2000.
I don't know if you can hear the video, the sound.
This thing didn't build itself. Millions of people across every culture have been plugging things in, running cables across oceans, installing servers, building data centers.
I like to think about what happened in the 70s and 80s.
The web is incredibly exciting because it is the fulfillment of a lot of our dreams.
Engineering project
I think
in the world
that the web is going to be profound in what it does to our society.
The internet is the largest
People could
engineering
see
project
it
the
as
Earth
just
has ever
information
seen.
management.
And we're
People
just getting
could see
started.
it as a technological wonder of IP and HTML stuff. But it was a profound societal change that was triggered by a paper in 1989 that was judged as vague but exciting. Vague but exciting was Tim Berners-Lee's impression of his paper that redefined how society works today. And that was then augmented when we layer on top of it to the second platform, which is this really connecting technology now to the people and what they want to do, which is connect to each other. And you know, we put commercial models around that might be driving us in the wrong direction. But oh boy, that is pervasive and culturally changed everything. And so the question is, you know, is the third platform, the digital mirror, the Ready Player One, the snowstorm, the persistent digital reality that we might already be living in, you know, Elon tells us, is this something that could help us achieve what we want? And remember, the entertainment industry is now dominated by gaming. It's a $150 billion industry, gaming, that is building fantastic technologies. And we're seeing these technologies converging with our world. So, you know, the concept of digital twinning is not new. It's really a really interesting, you know, thought experiment and concepts of using a digital reality to impact on the physical world and establishing a persistent link. And Center for Digital Britain and the Gemini project, there's really doing great work at saying, okay, but what do we do with it? How do we stand it up? But at the same time, there's technology behind this that is evolving at passionate speed. You know, Unreal, NVIDIA, Unity, really happening very, very fast. And at the same time, the least digitized industry in the world, the largest one, Hore industry, is become very interesting to the cloud vendors, which are now invading and finding route to market. Amazon is finding Autodesk. Microsoft is going direct with Digital Twinning Consortium or indirect with Bentley. You saw Oracle come to us. You've seen Google. The big tech is saying, right, this world now is ready for a cultural shift. We know what that looks like. I like to point out a couple of them that are really fascinating in terms of business model are NVIDIA and Unreal. Now, you see, Unreal, NVIDIA, Unity are starting where, you know, where they understand visualization, and they're starting to put persistent visual pipelines between the information of the built world and a digital persistent reality. It is important, however, to note that Unity is in the business of creating those technologies and selling them, whereas NVIDIA and Unreal are not. Epic Games is an entertainment business, is doing very, very well. A sideshow was to create a game engine technology, which they will give for free. NVIDIA, likewise, is in the game of selling silicon, which is GPU processor that creates edge AI. And so that's a fantastic interface with the built world. So they make their money on silicon, and their Omniverse digital layer they will give for free. So we now have a kind of Google moment where, you know, they give for free their technology because they have different ways to think about this. And we're putting this to work. You know, this is not new. You know, this is Buro Happold 5 or 6 years ago, designing in real time the Qatar World Cup stadia, where you know, the design representation is linked to a visual representation in real time, and you know, things recalculate. I think it's quite interesting. So you start seeing things like View City saying, right, we now have a fully persistent representation of cities in game engine. Why don't we put that in the hand of citizens? Restate the conversation of between the city at human scale with those technologies. Let's start inviting society into the visual representation. And it's it's accelerating. This is a screen capture of a real-time pixel streamed metaverse of London Terminal 2. So your design representation changes, meta-humans living in this real-time digital. This is not a mock-up, this is real. You upload your data to 3D repo, it fuses the data with digital assets of Star Alliance and digital assets of Heathrow and BAA. There it is, you're in it. What do you want to do? How do you want to alter that digital reality? And it's what they're calling the metaverse, a persistent, ubiquitous, real-time digital layer, providing agency over the built world and thereby society. And it's happening, right? I mean, you saw 11 million people watching a concert in Fortnite. Now, at technology, it wasn't one Fortnite and 11 million people. We're not there yet. It was more like 100,000 Fortnite, each with a few thousand people. So not quite a single reality, but it's coming. What we also seeing is the meta-human.
And meta-human.
Your representation, your agency being created as an avatar, right? The word avatar, snowblind, it's coming. I love this.
People have often talked about whether you can create either people who have lived in the past or people when they were younger, and we actually create ABBA in their prime. 1979, we are creating them as digital characters that we
Let's become immortal or just redefine entertainment.
Animate them and perform them and make them look perfectly real.
I mean, there are businesses now that are investing in technology that will become radically,
and that's formed the basis for the whole of the
to
project,
fuse
the backbone.
entertainment, reality, and digital. And
the challenge has always been merging the digital with the physical. Make digital ABBA come into the physical world and for the boundaries between those two worlds to disappear. Our director, Bailey Walsh, had to crack that code. And as simple as it sounds, but he did it with light. Light is the connector. Light and audio and this environment is going to be a unique space to be in, which is...
And, I mean, this is really fantastic. And it's not new. If you visit Tokyo Media Lab, you see this intersection of architects manipulating our sensors with light and video projection and creating this hybrid reality. Now, all this is happening now in our lifetime. We need to put it to work. And that was the fun bit, but how do we put agency through this technology over the built world? Look at this. This is called Townscaper. This is how game guys think, oh, let's create a game that builds cities. It's encoding inside the gameplay the rules and the adjacencies and the way that a city would react to a human intervention. Like this was not designed as an architectural game, but this was designed to demonstrate what gamification of providing agency over the built world might look like. It's extraordinary. If I could bring it right back a little bit more, it says, right, what is in the human that actually wants to plan an intervention on the built world? They know they quit with millions of facts and knowledge that they've accumulated over a lifetime. Why don't we capture that into these game engine technologies? Why don't we use this metaverse to start saying, like, before I do an intervention, let's do it inside the built world. Now, if you say to a 50, 60-year-old let's use technology to plan the next, in this case, tunnel construction. They'll say, I know how to do it. You're gonna need to augment me with technology. But if you bring those culture of gaming and metaverse and you bring that know-how and their knowledge into that world, this is what happens. Now, I'm not sure that you want to call that BIM anymore, but for sure, it's exactly what we're trying to do. Better predictability, digital rehearsal, knowledge capture, robust information definition of what's the project plan. And of course, and I'll finish there. One of the things that happened when we went in this digital world, the first platform, the second platform, is we redefined also the economics and the businesses and the value chains. And that is what we call platformization. And platformization is not just redefining mobility as I sell cars and I finance cars and I then replace that with an app. It really got across the spectrum, product platform, digital platform, and innovation platforms. And it's really exciting to think that once we shift our industry truly to that digital world and give an interface to it, then we might be unlocking new business models. And this is not just pure theory. If we examine what companies have been trying to do with technology, there's been a tendency to look at our industry as a reasonably static supply chain that we want to digitally enable, and to do that and overcome the connectivity issues that arise when you do that. You vertically integrate and you invent companies like Cogital or Blockable. But in the UK, and if you look at what the Construction Innovation Hub is trying to do, what we're trying to do is enable digitally an ecosystem. And so we're saying, no, in a platform world, in a digital world of platform, then actually the cultural approach to do this is to create open ecosystem and open markets. And those are much more stable and much more efficient. And if that sounds like theory and saying, no, you're talking about game engines and economic theory in the same sentence, I'll just finish on the definition of the metaverse and how Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, who is giving us Unreal Engine 5 for free, is that he sees this persistent digital layer that is being constructed and assembled gradually, is that it's a medium that allows a much greater economic efficiency. And if there is one industry that needs economic efficiency, it is ours. So there we go. Will the metaverse unlock our industry? Certainly as a culture, I think it is an exciting, really transformational way of thinking. Radical democratic adoption of technology might just be calling BIM something else.
Thank you. Thank you, Alain. If you could have all our speakers back on screen. I'm a 58-year-old person and I nearly had a heart attack there. That video you were showing. So excuse me, you woke us up. You woke us up. Very exciting, very thought-provoking, but we might come to that bigger picture that you presented. If anything has showed us with this particular session, we're all human beings, not machines, I can tell you that. So David, I had a question for you and I kind of stuttered a little bit when I trying to get it out, but it's to you or to any software vendor out there. You talk about fragmentation, you talk about the cost of waste and rework. We're aware of all that and the importance of building, having business insights for clients. But to what extent would, say, Autodesk understand, the challenges of professions? Like, for example, I'm a quantity surveyor and our responsibility is to quantify, take off, estimate. I can say with some degree of confidence that the profession hasn't really moved on with the use of, let's say, BIM and automated takeoff. Why is that the case? And does your product, Autodesk Construction Cloud, will it fix that?
The short answer is no. The longer answer is it's not so much about technology capability. It's what Casey mentioned earlier on, use cases. It's about the pervasive metaverse. It's about all of these things. As a technology service supplier and technology platform supplier, the one thing that we do is we don't go in and talk to clients about technology straight away. It's more about what the client is trying to achieve as outcomes and where they are today, where they want to be tomorrow, and bridging the gap. So to take it back to your perspective as a quantity surveyor, the first thing that I would ask the quantity surveyor is, okay, where are you today and what are the challenges you're experiencing? Is it leveraging BIM data? Is it getting involved in BIM projects? Yeah. Is it all of that? And then once we break that down, then the technological layer can be applied. But without that initial analysis, the technology, there's no point talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm talking to Diatech here, I understand that, but you did talk about the Autodesk Construction Cloud product, which obviously you're involved with. But so is it an issue then around training and education that maybe here in TU Dublin, as quantity surveying academics, we're not maybe, creating the digital Navi or the digital native quantity surveyors that need to be exiting our courses,
It's a combination of that, but I think it's more to do with the industry recognizing themselves what outcomes are and what values really mean. Like if you look at the advent of BIM, it was a delivery mechanism and a methodology to deliver projects better. But what that's evolved into is a wider process understanding about the wider implications of doing things better, having better outcomes. That comes with a combination of experience. Now, to take it back to the educational aspect of it, people coming at a third level will have the relevant skills and understanding of framework and technology and everything else. But will they have the understanding of how the businesses work, how the dynamics work, how information flows back and forward between what's happening on site, what's happening in the business model? Probably not. That's what those of us of a certain age learned on the job. So for me, I think it's more about what happens in that preceding period from when someone leaves third level and when they move into working in industry. There has to be a mentorship of some capacity that leverages the understanding of the industry, not just understanding of the method.
Yeah, because some of the challenges we have in Ireland would be different to the UK, but in professions as well. So, for example, we have, an international construction measurement standard, ICMS, that we need to work with. And I'm just wondering, is, for example, the likes of Autodesk and other solutions, do they understand that, there's a certain way we need to consume data as architects, engineers, surveyors, and that maybe there's a disconnect between what the tech companies are providing and what we on the ground have to produce?
I would say historically there was a disconnect. Regionality and globalization don't always go hand in hand. The problem from a software vendor standpoint is you can't be everything to everybody. And what you've got to create is try to create as uniform a platform as possible. Now, what I've seen from our perspective in terms of what's happening in terms of the software space and from the technology space is it's multi-system integration is the key to unlock that. The ability to transfer and exchange information in a structured and a secure format, which allows you to work with it in whatever way or shape or form that you want, is the next logical step. It's not about closed platforms, it's about system integration. So like the biggest one I come across all the time now as a first step is clients want to link SharePoint to Autodesk Construction Cloud. So the reality of it is that means I'm disseminating access of information based on the target audiences in those platforms. But again, that then can be scaled up to wider platforms.
Yeah, thank you, David. I might just open it up to all the speakers about this topic of digital twins. It's popping up all the time. They say it's the topical issue today. How far are we away from what you call, David, autonomous digital twins with machine learning and AI creating these models for us? I mean, are we light years away? Because for me, it seems like we are.
From my perspective, we're not light years away. I think, again, go back to Casey's point, use cases. The use cases have to be wider than the provision of what a project requires. We need to value data differently than what we value it today. We need to look at the wider scope of it. Part of that process is understanding the ecosystems of how we interact with each other, whether it be socially, whether it be industrially, or whether it be on a project or a business level. Having a centralized methodology about how we exchange information unlocks all of that. And then we can start to tap into the benefits and the capabilities of digital twin.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Casey.
It depends what people are thinking when they hear the phrase digital twin. As we've said, use cases are the key to this. If there is an ability for a client to communicate what their need is, what problem they're trying to solve, and we've applied the right data and process and technology to that thing, and it looks like a virtual representation of something with dynamic data that feeds and informs that process, then yeah, let's call it a digital twin. If you're looking at what comes to people's mind as a fully functioning mirror of an exact thing that's happening right now across the entire country, that's a unicorn at the moment, but it's a long way off. And there, as David said, there's lots of adjustments in the way companies operate that are required to say, okay, if we're going to share data for the benefit, the societal benefit, that's a different conversation than.
Yeah, I mean, there appears to be cases out there, use cases out there that, and I think Claire Penny alluded to it earlier today about, the fact that digital twins can create greater yields for client owners, property investors. Surely that's then, a business output, and it just makes sense for them to have the physical asset and the digital asset, so they can use the digital asset to manage their investment over its life. Does it not make sense for clients to ask for this at the start, and then they can manage it more effectively?
If they have a use case that requires it, yeah.
So if it's a building that they're going to be maintaining, not selling on, or whatever it might be. Alain, have you any comments about, your presentation was very dynamic and was a little bit frightening in that, are the machines going to take over the world? But I mean, where do you see, what insight do you have about the medium to near future for our industry and how we're going to move forward?
I think it is moving forward very rapidly. And I really like, the focus on use cases. I think once you describe a use case, then it stops having a jargon word.
Yeah.
I think that's that. So you describe the use case of, can I be a quantity survey? What are my use cases? I think it's really, really interesting. And then it's not BIM 5D anymore, or BIM whatever. It's just a better way of doing your profession. And so that focus, putting the human at the center, really re-examining, what the human was doing in the first place, and how much was things you didn't want to do, like count, and how much the things you wanted to actually do was understand and have an opinion and an advice based on that understanding. And I think that's what I'm seeing.
Very good. Can I just impress upon the audience to pop your questions into the chat on the right side of the, you've got a chat, you've got QA, and you've got, links you can put in. So please pop it in so that we can continue to engage with the speakers. Casey, quick question for you. How would you describe Building Smart International, UKI, as opposed to UK BIM Alliance? What is the essential difference between the UK BIM Alliance and the UK Building Smart Alliance? But there can be some confusion about that.
Yeah, there can be. So the UK BIM Alliance is the broader organisation in the UK to promote the use of BIM as business as usual. Building Smart UK and Ireland is the regional chapter of Building Smart International, and the work there is focused on the interoperability side of things, on the technical side of exchanging information, whereas we're leaning on the processes that are outlined in ISO 19650. It's all about the technical side of data for objects.
Yeah. So what would a strong UKI Building Smart chapter mean for Ireland and the UK?
It's an opportunity to get your voice heard. So if there's anyone out there trying to exchange information for a particular purpose and they're struggling to be able to do that, there's two things. Either it might have already been solved somewhere else in another chapter around the world, and we can lean on that and push that through, communicate it through. Or if it doesn't exist, we can create it. We can push that, escalate it up to Building Smart International, become a project. And we had exactly that instance a couple of years ago with the Ports and Waterways project, in that if you're trying to create an IFC, an open standard graphical and data about a port, it's very difficult to do. Now the language exists within IFC to do that. So it's creating that language that we use for specific domains.
And of course, many Irish companies work internationally. And by way of an example, Building Smart International have a BIM certification program, have they not? And there's going to be a particular certification program rolled out through the UKI chapter. Could you maybe just give us a few sentences on that?
Yes, it's exactly what you said. And if anyone on the call can join on Thursday at 11:50, I think it is, I'm doing a session on exactly that, on the certification scheme. It's an individual certification scheme. We've all seen company level certifications to show that they have the capacity to undertake BIM projects, but this is a very personal, individual one. It's a foundation program that says you have the skills, knowledge and understanding to be able to deliver projects as a person rather than as part of an organization. So
and of course we see
expand more about that on Thursday.
So many industries with kite marks, don't we? Whether it's the retail industry, the food industry. So it's very important that something like Building Smart International, independent, group like that is in 22 chapters across the world.
Yep.
That Ireland play its role in the UKI chapter, and I think we'll be certainly in 2022 we'll hear a lot more about that. Alain, what can I say about your presentation? As I say, my heart stopped at one point when that first video went on. You talk about culture is central to digitalization. Could you just give us the reason for that? Why is culture so important that we need to fix the culture?
Yeah, I think we see it in two parts. I think we see a resistance to change, and clearly here we are seeing an industry having to digitalize and seize the opportunity to digitalize, and so that culture of change is really, really hard. And I think that's one part of it, and then there is the second part is when you go through these transformative events, you really need to think about what's your purpose and put culture and purpose at the center of the organization, because that's going to be what persists through the change, not what might have been the construct at the time. And I think that's what we've learned. And, ultimately, if you think about, for example, retailing, ultimately being a great retailer was to understand your consumer, meet your consumer, reach your consumer, serve your consumer. In a digital world, then, of course, that interface with the consumer was redefined through the internet. Now, don't make the mistake to think that Amazon is a tech company. It's the most customer-centric company in the world, built for the digital world, that chose to serve customers and decided that the first product they would sell these customers, because it was the simplest one to sell on the internet. And if you think about it, if I want to serve customer in a digital world, I will start by selling books. I can ship them. Everybody knows what to expect. They don't need to touch them before they order them. Large part of the order is going to be, school books at the beginning of the year, reference, etc. So I don't actually need to have an intimate experience. And so they reinvented retail for the 21st century. The rest of the industry did not have that culture. They thought that they were running physical places where people exchange cash, notes, for physical object. And they missed the boat. They completely missed the boat. They said, you know, the internet is where I have a website. I have a website department for that. They really did not have the culture to serve their customers. And we've seen that happen hundreds of times now. And why I am passionate about this industry is that we live in it, right? So
you know,
we've got bad bookshop. I don't think it's impacting society that much. But if the place where we exist is not as good as it could be, then we're very impacted.
I mean, the very first thing that you said, thank you, Alain, David, was fragmentation. And actually, we're still educating our people in a fragmented way, whether it's a degree in architecture, a degree in surveying, a degree in construction management, silos at 19 years of age, 20, 21, 22. They come out of industry and then all of a sudden it's very different. I think we have a fundamental problem, and this is something that's maybe in, I think it's probably UK as well, Casey, because we inherited a lot of the kind of the professional structure of our industry from the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, whatever. In Europe, in Scandinavia, they think different. I think they create more rounded professions. Now, maybe I'm being provocative here.
I think that's really good, you know, really interesting observation, because I think fragmentation exists in two parts. I think we have a fragmented industry because to deal with the complexity and the risk around capital intensiveness of our industry and any intervention we built in it, we manage that complexity by siloing. Because the only way we could manage the built environment and delivering it with the technology we had, which was A4 drawings, you know, so we get to the edge of RIBA stage 2 with 1 to 100 drawings, right? Ultimately, that's the information we've decided to create and exchange at end of RIBA stage 2. So our industry is siloed and fragmented because of that. And so there is a big theme around reintegrating the industry. Then you have professions. And I think, of course, the profession followed that concept. But I think this is from any other industry, we're saying the same thing, is how do you get T people? How do you get people that understand horizontally how they integrate and then have a specific sector? Or other people talk them about purple people that understand the art of the possible in the context and their very specific domain knowledge. And I think as an observation, you know, those society that educate more towards the polymath and the natural arts approach, rather than, you know, from the age of 16 thou shalt pick 3 A levels. I'm sorry, how can you become an architect and transdisciplinary at that if you've done, you know, 3 A levels? But there are 10 or 15 A levels you should be pursuing. So
right. So when you talk about T-shape, you're basically talking about someone that has excellent knowledge, say as an architect or an engineer or a surveyor, but they can't collaborate. They don't know how to collaborate. That maybe they might have gone through a degree in a university and they've never actually worked they've never worked with a quantity surveyor.
The foundational stone of the engineer as a profession is the ICE that says the engineer is the mediator between the philosopher and the mechanic. But what I meet when I meet somebody, an engineer that comes out of university, is a mechanic. It's done math, advanced math, physics, and it's done 3 years of engineering calculations.
Yeah, but maybe they don't understand what the quantity surveyor, for example, needs by way of information.
There is no cultural teachings around collaboration, around transdisciplinary
that must be the problem, because you're sending them out to industry. You're hoping that, let's think about the title of this conference, Construction Innovations for Future Generations. If we continue to teach people in the same way, we're not going to get the more T-shaped professional that we need. So what do we have to, what can we do?
It gets my vote to broaden the education and to really celebrate the horizontal part, because we're really good in the vertical part of the T at the moment, but I think the value is in the horizontal integration.
Yeah, so
and that education.
Every 19-year-old who wants to study in the built environment learns a baseline about the built environment and the technologies that are used within the built environment. And then as they progress through that pyramid of learning, they start to specialize: architecture, engineering, surveying. It's fascinating, but we keep producing these people who struggle because they find it's so fragmented.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on timings, generations, and all of those things. But there are organizations, education establishments who have tried that and have tried to say, okay, we'll put all of our architects, engineers, landscape designers. In my degree, I was sharing my first year with landscape architects. Excellent. So it kind of does work. I haven't worked with many landscape architects since, but I ended up working in a multidisciplinary design practice at Arup. So it ends up, it forms part of the way you develop your own career and your personality within your career. And there's lots of different personalities. We don't have time to discuss all those, but it's about understanding and appreciating other people's positions and other people's requirements, as you said, Alan, during a project as well as during your career. And it's only by doing it that you learn it. And if
I think
we've all tried and had input into our own professional institutions, as an architect, I've tried to say, just teaching them this one narrow thing is not going to give you a well-rounded.
And I think this is where the technology company come in. Dare I say, David? We have an example in our university where I think it's Topcon. I don't mind mentioning Topcon. They give the solution, the hardware, to our students. So there's an opportunity for them to work with the latest technology. We're looking to try and invest in our physical infrastructure, our software, our hardware. But there's a real opportunity, I think, for the vendors to work closer with the educators to give them a greater insight into what the future brings.
I mean, there's definitely been steps taken in the last few years to do that. We have the summer schools, but I think I pick up on Alain and Casey's point in that the issue isn't so much about industry. The issue is more about the generation. Like we're dealing with a different generation now. Like I'm over 40, won't tell you what, but I learned my trade on a drafting board. Then I moved into 2D CAD, then I moved into 3D CAD, now I moved into BIM. So I've gone through 4 eras of change to essentially do the same thing. We're dealing with a generation who are going straight into this digitalized age. Now they're a consuming generation. Like they want information here and now. They want it there in bite-sized chunks. They want to move it around. The question is, how do you then apply, let's say, industrial experience and educational requirements into that format that's bite-sized and it's available to that audience? And I think that's really the biggest transformation that needs to happen, is that I can start here, but I can very quickly move here, 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 depending on what I'm feeling at any given time, but still progress forward.
Thank you, David.
I think there are two tensions, right? I think there's a tension on the vertical of the T with I think technology companies are fantastic at helping educationalists on board and help people understand what technology could be used for. And that's the killer skill of the 21st century, is to know how to mobilize technology for whatever you do, and digital and silicon enabled one, pick one of those. I think that's, and I don't think we really have a problem there except ambition. The more difficult one is, as technology really takes over, who knows how to calculate a logarithm? Who knows how to use a slide rule? Who has an understanding of numbers that is developed through manipulating that? But now to know that if you want to do these kind of calculation, it's just automatic, right? It comes out of a button on your calculator. I remember that very same conversation with my grandfather, who was an engineer, who didn't know whether he was going to give me a calculator or not for Christmas, because he wanted me to understand numbers, but at the same time didn't want me to be held back by my calculation, because I could do 10 times more with a calculator that had that e to the x and that ln key on it. And I think that's the conversation.
Okay, I think I'm going to bring it to a close there. Thank you very much, Alain. A lot of passion in there, those messages. It is my responsibility as chair of this conference to bring it to a close for day one. I suppose the one thing we've learned with a few bumps on the way is that we're not machines. We are human after all. And I thought we dealt with things very well. And I hope you, as an audience, appreciated the sentiments of our speakers. Thank you for taking the time in your busy work schedule to join us today. Today, we've heard from over 20 presenters. And thank you to our chairs, Emma, Louise, Ken, and Roger. And, you know, there was some really interesting messages from today. Certainly, the big messages that I can take from this is that, you know, the future is bright. PJ Rudden, I think, had the quote of the day: if we don't shape our built environment, it's going to shape us. I think the topics we selected for the BIM gathering were right on the money. You know, Rebecca talked about people centricity. She talked about the UK being a leader, and I think that, you know, the very fact that we've got Casey and other people from the UK BIM Alliance today is sentiment that diversity is key. 7 of our 11 presenter keynotes today are females. That's the strategic decision made by the Alliance, that we're really pushing the agenda. Claire spoke about how we can come together. It was a question that I asked earlier today, and that we're a long way down the road, but really I'd love to see more of the professional bodies in Ireland working closer together, maybe on a national project where we can maybe simulate all that's good about digitalization in a kind of in a controlled environment. And yes, every client wants projects on time and on budget. David, always great to hear from you. Great to hear about the Autodesk Tandem product, and wishing you every success with that. And of course, Casey, again, thanks for having to deal with Anne in the background. I hope Anne's walk pays dividends. I understand it's for a charitable purpose, and please send her my best regards. She really is a superwoman, what she's done over the last number of years. And last but not least, to you, Alain, for almost giving me a heart attack. Did you know I had a pacer fitted a few months ago, so it almost went off. So listen, thank you to everyone. It goes without saying, the team behind the scenes, and a lot of work was going under the surface that you didn't see. I've enjoyed it, but I'm actually looking forward now to turning this off and going for some lunch and maybe a nice walk in the park. So we're looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. 8:25 sharp. So tomorrow is more about technology, more about unlocking industrialized futures, modern methods of construction, robotics, all that good stuff. And then on to day 3, where we really talk about the importance of people. Thank you so much. Take care, and thanks for your support. We really do appreciate it.